from there. The morning discussion was Lord Brahma speaking to Devahuti about Lord Kapila, who had not been born yet, but Kapila was within the womb of Devahuti, and it's just 2 verses, this morning's class. It follows 7, 8, 9, some number of verses. Brahma speaking to Kardama Muni. So Kardama Muni and Devahuti were pure devotees. Like Vasudeva and Devaki became the mother and father, mother of Krishna. So similar qualification of spiritual perfection. And from the previous chapter, Devahuti, having just been with her husband, Kardama, for tens of thousands of years, because it's Satya Yuga, long time to be married. No indication they had a marriage problem. They were very happy together. Skipping many details, there were 9 daughters born, and they are now of a mature stage. And Devahuti speaking to her amazingly qualified husband, indicating, I've satisfied my material desires, but I've not taken proper advantage of being in your association, a perfected soul, and I'm lamenting that I haven't requested of you and received from you liberation from material bondage. It says that in many different ways. So the beginning of the chapter that we're discussing now is 24. Kardama says, Devahuti, you're perfectly qualified. As they say in Australia, no worries. But Vishnu already said that he is going to become our son. And very soon, he will become your son. And he will deliver liberation to you by his teachings and his association. And sure enough, that's what happened. She became pregnant, and within her womb was Lord Vishnu, just as he promised. Then Lord Brahma came, because Lord Brahma had just finished constructing the universe. Now he has to fill it up with qualified beings, and he needs Prajapatis to do that, and he sees this as a perfect opportunity. 9 daughters plus many of the other sages, then they can help fill up the universe with good population. So he comes to deliver that message, which he does to Kardama. Please, I request that you, according to character and quality, match your 9 daughters with the sages, and they can then be married, and they can help fill up the universe with qualified praja. He praises Kardama, you're a perfected being. It gives the examples of how he got there. And then speaks to Devahuti. So that's what this class now is a continuation of. Your son, he's still in the womb, but he gives his name, he describes what he's going to look like. the color of his hair, what his eyes will look like, his features, and what he's going to do. He's going to give teachings that Devahuti, as you requested your good husband, Kapila will give the teachings that will Shiyante Sangshaya Grantihi. That was the phrase. So we had some discussion from Prabhupada's purport on that. And there's a similar phrase, so it means, samshaya means doubt, and grantihi means the knot, so that's the knot between the soul and material energy is false ego, known as another, that the moving force of that is avidya or ignorance, ignorance of who we are. Through the medium of false ego, we identify with what we're not. And Kapila will give knowledge that will remove that ignorance, that will cut the knot of material identification, and that liberation that you're searching for will be yours. We're very fortunate in many, 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 many ways, starting with we're receiving knowledge in this disciplic succession manner, and therefore authoritatively, that's how we get our knowledge. And as the purport that we read this morning, there's a small thing, knowledge has to be applied, and when you apply knowledge, proper knowledge, then detachment follows, and from that detachment comes at least the potential of realizing Krishna. Realizing Krishna is possible only through bhakti. So the application of knowledge is to be done in devotion to Krishna. The language is something that we've all heard so many times because we're devotees. But there are people that are not devotees and they haven't heard it so many times. So they have different ideas. I've just spent since the latter part of August, I visited 16 different universities. And there's a lot of ideas out there that are not devotional. And people that come to our programs, they're inquisitive, they're searching, they have a spiritual inquisitiveness, and they don't really know. And sometimes they think they know. That makes it more difficult than if they understand they don't know. But a common generic variety out there is material cessation. The Sanskrit term is Nirvana. Prabhupada has given a very simple definition. Material cessation, or cessation of fruitive activity. Cessation of fruitive activity. So when you stop fruitive activity, what's on the other side? Or you stop material existence, what's on the other side? Well, if you don't know, then it's, I don't know, or you give it a name and call it void, because the flip side of this is nothing. Or you can call it Brahman, or you can call it becoming one with God, in so many different terms and nomenclatures, but it's an unknown. Fortunately for us, especially through Srimad Bhagavatam and disciplic succession, we can have an idea of what's on the other side. There's a very nice purport, I encourage you to read it sometime, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, texts that are combined together, 20 through 23. The topic is Samadhi. It's the, of the Eightfold Yoga System, it's at the very top of the 8. Mind completely fixed in transcendence. So Prabhupada describes that in earlier section. Samadhi is not just nirvana or material cessation, it's fixing the mind on something. And the something is not nothingness or void. It's swarupena vyavastati. Swarupena vyavastati is a term that's found when Shukadeva Goswami is describing the topics of the Bhagavatam. It's one of the 10 topics, liberation. And it's described as swarupena vyavastati. Very simple. I've been teaching this to college students and they get it, so I'm sure this audience will get it. Swarup means your spiritual form. What's on the other side of this is spiritual form. And vyavastati, situated in your spiritual form, engaged in activities unto the supreme spiritual form. It's interesting watching the faces of the students as they're processing that one. Because we're accustomed to thinking of things in terms of material experience, that is, material form. But spiritual form is not a material form, it's the other way around. Material form is in the likeness of spiritual form. Biblical teaching. Man is created in the image of God, the spiritual form of God. This form is a poor imitation of that one. In the spiritual realm, beyond material cessation is spiritual form, full of bliss and knowledge eternally. So samadhi is fixed on that with the mind and with spiritual form. You engage in activities. Even on this plane, you engage in activities of devotion, madgatena antaratmana, with the mind fixed on Krishna. That's the topmost stage. And then there's the process of getting there. Okay? You're sitting right next to the speaker and it's loud.
Somebody's phone is connected to the speaker and keeps making a big noise. So I was trying to figure it out.
I left my phone home, so I'm not guilty. Swarupena vyavastati. So we're practicing sadhana bhakti. We're not there yet. We're not at that stage of liberation. But the bhakti process is meant to take us there. And that the vehicle that we, fasten your seatbelt and take off, it's sound. We just become situated, if we're attentive, to the sound of the name and the message of Bhagavatam, and then apply it, act upon it, and it takes us to the spirit, what's on the other side of material cessation, liberation, swarupena vyavastati. So back to the Bhagavatam message this morning. Brahma says to Devahuti, Kapila will give teachings that will cut the knot of doubt so that you can achieve this swarupain of yavastiti. You can achieve this, what you want. This stage beyond material cessation into the realm of ultimate liberation. That's another term that Prabhupada uses. Ultimate liberation means not just cessation, but the positive activity of the soul. What do we do when we get there? Ultimate liberation. So, we mentioned in class that this same phrase, Chiyante Sangshaya Grantihi. There's a similar language found in Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2. So I'm going to go there. Well, I hope you'll come with me. And in Prabhupada's arrival prayer in the Boston Harbor, he cites these verses, Canto 1, Chapter 2, stages of bhakti. When he's praying to Krishna, how is this going to be possible to deliver these people message of transcendence when they're so involved in ignorance and passion? How is it going to be possible? Then he refers to these verses of becoming free from ignorance and passion by the hearing process, hearing transcendental sound vibration, and then subsequently what follows that, up to the stage of realizing Krishna and understanding the message, Shuddha Sattva. So that process is described there. It's cited also in Bhagavad Gita purports. And Jiva Goswami refers to these verses, these same series of verses, the chapter 2 verses that are the description of the bhakti process in Bhakti Sandarbha, naturally, because the source of reference for Jiva Goswami to explain Krishna is Srimad Bhagavatam, and to explain Krishna you need the process to understanding him, and that's the bhakti process. So he goes through those verses one by one, and I'm just going to read a few things. There's a little stack of books there. But start with the bhakti process is hearing and chanting about Krishna, and the mind needs to be absorbed, one-pointed mind, mindfulness, if you remember from, what was it, Tuesday? Was it here? No, somewhere. Oh, I know where it was. It was someplace else. Mindfulness when chanting. Mindfulness and chanting. So, the Madgatena Antaratmana Shraddhavan Bhajateyamam, the two parts, the mind and what you do, your actions. Mind and Krishna, and perform devotional service, activities of bhakti. So text 15 says, 14 says, therefore with one pointed attention one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead who is the protector of the devotees. That's what you should do, and the way that you should do it is with one pointed attention. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead, therefore, who will not pay attention to his message. It's honoring the hearing and chanting, remembering process. By that hearing and chanting, remembrance comes, not memorization kind of remembrance, but what you hear about regularly is what your thoughts are then occupied with. Sound impacts that like that. everything all right? Okay. I could speak a lot about, New York City, going along the street, and the car next to you is like rocking and shaking and moving around because they're playing rap music as loud as the speaker will go. And the whole vehicle is bouncing, and the person is pounding on the steering wheel. And when they get out of their car, probably the same thing is going on with them. And I've been in situations where people they know the lyrics. I can't even follow what the heck they're saying. But they got it memorized, and it's like osmosis. It's in their being, just because of sound vibration. Filled with anger and curse words, and I don't know what else is going on. So, sound vibration affects your consciousness. So if the sound vibration is Krishna Katha, then comes remembrance. It just follows. The slower motion is described in just a bit. That is to say, cleansing takes place, and then there's contact through sound vibration with the object, which is spiritual, and that's Krishna, and that's our original consciousness. That's the remembrance. Remembrance is, in that sense, is like remembering who we are when we've forgotten. Or you go to sleep and you wake up, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so, and now I'm supposed to go do this thing, that thing, and the other thing. Prabhupada even likens when, after the stage of cosmic annihilation, when the living entities resume their activities, they just pick up where they left off. Like sleep, or like, under anesthesia, it's deep sleep. And then you wake up from anesthesia and just continue where you left off. Guna and karma and time. Move things forward. Although everything was in abeyance for some time. So, sound vibration is really important. And absorbing the mind with single-pointedness in spiritual sound vibration can carry one to the liberated position. And that liberated position, now this verse, text 15, is cutting the knot, same language as what we discussed this morning. Cutting the knot of reactionary work. Karma granti is not, karma granti nibandhana. Chidyante, cut with the sword. And that sword in this case is knowledge, but knowledge that leads to application of knowledge that leads to devotion. That was pretty quick. Knowledge that leads to application of knowledge that leads to devotion. Because that's what knowledge is meant for. When, back to this morning, Kapila Dev is going to teach Sankhya Yoga. It's knowledge, but that's knowledge, not just knowledge. It's knowledge to be applied, and when you apply proper knowledge, you get realization, and it awakens your natural consciousness, the consciousness of devotion. And then, in devotion, the object of devotion becomes known. Krishna discloses himself. I'm like this. A relationship of exchange. It's not a one-way, we do something and Krishna's a stone. It's a relationship. And Krishna then discloses himself. We offer with love, and Krishna discloses himself, proportionate. So I'm referring to this text 15 because it's the same language as this morning verse. But then it continues. I'll skip ahead to text 21. Vidyante hridaya grantis chidyante sarva sankshaya. Similar language to this morning. Vidyante, kshiyante, strong. Vidyante, chidyante, kshiyante. Similar type of message. Pierced, cut, removed, terminated. So that's the material cessation part. That's the Nirvana thing. But Nirvana is a subset. It's not something we need to strive for. There are some people that consider themselves spiritualists. That's what they're striving for. What's beyond? I'm striving for material cessation. I had this nice discussion in Champaign-Urbana with a young man who was open-minded, that was refreshing, and he had deeply studied, read, and was practicing Buddhism. So, in my discussion with him on this topic, he said, at least the brand of Buddhism that he's familiar with, is when the topic of what's on the other side, like, is there a soul, for example, or God? The answer is, we don't talk about those things. Buddha said, nirvachaniya, there's no language to describe it, so let's just do our business. Become free from involvement in material activity, because material activity arises from desire, and desire is the root of misery. So we want to get free from misery. We want to get to the Nirvana stage. Bhagavad, I'm trying to share. The Bhagavatam, it's a subset. We don't have to separately strive for that. It's already there. And then, because the Bhagavatam is encouraging us, what's on the other side? And hear about name, form, quality, pastimes of Krishna. Now, how do we know? Well, that's a nice question. We know on authority. How do you know anything? You can know on the authority of your mind, you can know on the authority of inference and sense perception, you can know on the authority of Shabda. That's the Tattva Sandarbha topic. We know on the authority of Shabda. And the best of all sound vibration is Aparushaya Shabda. And the best of all of that is the Bhagavatam. So on the authority of the Bhagavatam, that's how we know. We know without a doubt. Samkhaya. Here's the translation for text 21. Thus the knot in the heart is false ego, by the way, is pierced, and all misgivings, samkhaya, are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. Now, if you remember from text 15, it already spoke about the chain of fruitive activity. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead, therefore will not pay attention to his messages. I feel like a lawyer here, like proving a case. Prabhupada said that we should know our scriptures like a lawyer knows the law books, because they're the authority, and on the basis of the authority, the lawyer makes his case. So the purpose of making a case is, in part, just to help free us from doubt, because we're hanging on to things that's keeping us from Krishna. There's some hesitation. Just like Krishna, Arjuna describes in Bhagavad Gita, what if I go down this path, one of his doubts, what if I go down this path and I don't reach the destination? Then I'm neither here nor there. I'm nowhere. I'm lost. That's a doubt. That doubt is addressed in this verse. I'll read it to you. But one of the doubts, I hear it from time to time, can I really achieve this? This is really high. It came in our discussion just this morning. This is really high. And how do we reconcile the fact that it's really high and I'm really low? I'm really far from that destination. Is this really something? Can I really have confidence in investing myself with both feet in the bhakti boat and the path of devotional service? Well, if we understand what the path of devotional service is, the answer is yes. We don't have to. It's not karma sannyas. We don't have to become something that we're not. We have to become who we really are. And the bhakti process is very powerful, and we can become who we are. We can know who we are and live in the world at the same time. Now, there are not a lot of people doing that. There's not a lot of external support from people in the workplace or people in school or people in the wherever other places. But the bhakti process is very powerful, and therefore there must be, at least notionally and with faith, the destination is real and the means to get me there is real. And then I can, according to my position, make progress. And the procedure is hearing and chanting attentively. Mindfulness when hearing and chanting. Language of the Bhagavatam is one pointed attention. So, that's one of the doubts. Is this really going to work? Conversely, is material pursuit of happiness really going to work? Like, that from the discussion yesterday evening. Narcissism, does it really work? Can you really achieve all of your desire just because you want to, because you're very special? Because you've heard it since you were little that you're really special, you're awesome. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve, go for it. I am, I will, end of story. Does it really work? Well, there's lots of indication it doesn't work. Not only doesn't always work, it doesn't work. It doesn't bring lasting satisfaction, etc. Now, is this alternative something that will work? Here's this is just to support the stages. This verse 21, it goes to a very high stage. It's past the prema stage, in other words, because the previous two verses is the bhava stage, prema stage, and prior to that is the nishtha, nashta prayeshu, abhadreshu, nityam bhagavata sevaya. That bhagavata seva helps one get to the nishtha stage, where the obstacles that I see in front of me, my own shortcomings, internally and externally, I can get on the other side of them. It works. It's a powerful process that if we apply it, take medicine and diet properly, the cure of the impurities of heart, sufficient that we come to this nishtha stage. But so the indication in text 21 that there still may be some doubt or some hesitation. We're not fully there yet. So that's what this verse is. Thus the knot of the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. Same as the verse this morning, that's the connection. Brahma saying to Devahuti that Kapila is going to give teachings that will take away all doubts. But she's a perfected being. So she's taking the position like one of us. She doesn't have any doubts, but she's taking that position by the Lord's arrangement. So now I'm reading from Burijan's unveiling his lotus feet, Jiva Goswami is commenting on this text. And I'm going to read another Jiva Goswami commenting on this text from Bhakti Sandarbha. So Jiva Goswami comments, the eagerness from Nectar of Devotion was the qualification for a devotee. We sincerity and eagerness. We want to participate in our relationship with Krishna again. We may not even be very clear what that is, but we're sincerely wanting. We've been saying to the college students, just have to want to know. There's another reality. I don't know what it is. That was the space I was in for quite some time as a college student. I don't know what it is, but I know there is. And I want to know. And I don't want to take somebody's word for it. I want to know, that kind of knowing. And that's the qualification. You just want to know. Sincerely you want to know. And, be ready to discard things that aren't real and have some capacity of discrimination to tell the difference. So, eagerness to serve Krishna powerfully overrules our feelings of being disqualified. Devotees sometimes feel disqualified. Sometimes they're on the other side. They have an overinflated estimation of themselves, and then there's this other side where they feel, connect with our topic last night, they feel not qualified. That's not bad. If you felt, I'm qualified, that's a disqualification. But if you feel not qualified, what do you do with that feeling? There's the fuel in your tank that carries you beyond that feeling is, I want to know. I have an eagerness to be in a relationship of service with Krishna. That's the ground. I'll say the same thing in two other different ways. It's the same thing. My experience with visiting colleges this past while, lots of people out there, in addition to doing yoga, they're experimenting with meditation. Meditation on what, they don't know, but just, this meditation, that meditation. And when having a discussion with them, meditation teaches them there's a higher place. And then after a particular mechanical meditation, you go back down again. So how do I stay in that, beyond the ordinary, everyday modes of nature consciousness, false ego consciousness? How do I get to this other, call it spiritual consciousness, and stay there? There has to be shelter. And if there isn't shelter, you can't stay there. You have mechanical means may be powerful to show you there's something beyond the ordinary, but how to stay there? There has to be shelter. So what you're meditating upon becomes very important. Therefore, we invite through sound, because that sound, abhinatvam nama namino, the sound, the name and the person named, they're the same. Abhinatvam nama namino. The name and the person. So we're taking shelter of Krishna through sound. Very powerful. Take shelter of Krishna. Although we don't know Krishna. We know, it's fall and the leaves are turning and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know what's going on around us in the material side. What's beyond the material we don't know. But sound can carry you there. There's a place of shelter and you don't have to come back. Mind can stay fixed through sound. It's a very powerful vehicle to carry us, and it can, the potency is there, can carry you instantly, or gradually, depending upon the degree of attachment to the temporary. So, one of the first doubts that's mentioned is referring specifically to, expanding on this morning's verse, the doubt that I'm not qualified. Eagerness to be in service to Krishna carries one beyond that self-doubt, because it's not you, it's Krishna that's carrying you to Him. That's bhakti. Now, if you don't have shelter in Krishna, you don't have that extra help. It's on your own. You're not going to make it. Although someone may bluff and say, I made it. It's not a permanent situation. It's not. It's very unstable and insubstantial. We're very fortunate. We have the kindness of Krishna's help. We just have to be eager for Krishna's help. Eager to be in service to Krishna. That's how you get Krishna's help. The knot in the heart, Hridaya Granthi, the morning verse was Samshaya Granthi. Here it's Hridaya Granthi, the knot in the heart. It's false ego. Misidentification with matter. It's on this side of material existence, not material cessation. So that misidentification with matter, Hridaya Granthis, is cut to pieces by engaging in devotional service to Krishna, whereby, at least in this stage, Krishna he indicates who he is. Two examples. I remember sharing this the other day. Texas A&M, nice college student, had their doubts. Said, I see you're here with a friend. Now, because you two spend time together, you've come to trust one another, and you know all kinds of things about one another that I don't know about you and I don't know about her either. But because you're together and there's a relationship of trust, you come to know all kinds of things. You share all kinds of things. You don't share with everybody because this trusting relationship. So with Krishna it's the same. You engage in activities where your life is simply whatever you have, you're offering with devotion to Krishna, whatever it is. And what's Krishna going to do? He'll start disclosing himself to you. By your extending yourself in a confidential way, he extends himself in a confidential way to you, and that way you can come to know him. It doesn't require blind faith, it requires a relationship with a person that's on the other end that's fully trustworthy. No flaw, no insufficiency. So that kind of doubt is removed. The harness of false ego, misidentification, that holds us very tightly. The language of text 15 is specific to the knot of karma. Now, supposing that knot of karma is with you and you enter into devotional service. Does that tendency of, I'm doing this devotional service because I want something, I have an expectation I'm going to get something. On the material side, I'm going to feel better, or my health will improve, or something, or I have more friends, or I'll feel more peaceful, or I'm going to get something. And then it may go like that for a while, and then here comes a tribulation, or somebody that's very dear to you has some calamity. Why did they're a good person, why did this bad thing happen to this good person? We have an expectation on the material side. But when there's clarity that the expectation of real happiness is in that relationship with Krishna, whatever the feature of duality is today, then there's contentment and happiness within. That was the verse that I showed last night, the final 524 Bhagavad Gita. Then you can be anywhere in any circumstance and you're contented. That's rare. That's the Bhagavad Gita's message, that's the Bhagavatam's message, that's the process of bhakti's gift. On the other side of false ego, kanta not. Because bhakti has the power to do that. And nothing else has the power to do that. See it the other way. Anything that you may do that's elevating is going to get pulled back again by the modes of material nature, karma, and false ego. You're on a leash. And wherever you go, it's impermanent, it's unstable. It gets frustrating. The bhakti process, the message of this chapter 2, the bhakti process can carry us beyond that. It's gradual. It's not that we see Krishna at once, but we can see Krishna or understand the presence of Krishna even initially just through sound. Our life starts to change. Wow. It's not sudden, but our life starts to change. And how we experience life starts to change through sound. It's transformational. Powerful process. And gradually, we come to know Krishna with full sankshaya, without shijyante sarva sankshaya, without any doubt. By hearing about the Lord, all theories of opposing devotional service are cut to pieces. That's clear. And by meditating on the Lord, all meditations opposing devotional service are devastated. That's also very clear. But the mind is flickering, and so it goes here and goes there. So that unsteadiness of mind or inattentiveness of mind, instead of mindfulness, distractedness, we don't get the full benefit. The potency is there, but we don't get the full benefit. A little simple example, supposing you have a fire and your cooking pot is 6 feet above the fire. The fire can be hot enough to cook anything, but if it's too far away, it's going to take a long time. So as our attention comes closer and closer to that sound vibration in full attentiveness to the sound vibration, as we come closer and closer through purification and sincere desire, eagerness, then fuller stages of purification will be felt. And there's an unsteady, sometimes more, sometimes less stage, but this stage of steadiness is available. It's certainly available. It's not a false promise. And the last thing, this is now when Krishna makes his appearance, because that's in the verse. Text 21. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. Now the self is with a small s, Atmani, but in the mature stage we see Krishna, literally. And there's Sanskrit terms for that, but Krishna appears within the heart of the pure devotee. We know that from Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena, etc. Santaksa Daiva Hridayeshu Vilo Yung Shama Sundra Chinchu Ganasarupam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. In the mature stage, Krishna appears in the heart. He's there, but he's not visible to us any more than who we really are is visible to us because we're distracted. So one more time, it's a little slower. The hearing and chanting process helps wind down the involvement in the temporary, the modes of nature, particularly ignorance and passion, the influences of karma, it's gradually reduced to this point of termination of the knot of fruitive activities, so that we don't take up devotional service anymore with our expectation XYZ, other than I simply want to be engaged in Krishna's service. I want to be engaged in Krishna's service. And that takes away it takes away this doubt, can I really achieve this? The doubt can be eradicated when we experience the power of Krishna and Krishna's kindness, and he helps us beyond our own efforts, beyond our own ability, beyond our own shortcomings. The kindness of Krishna is something we can palpably experience. It requires practice, careful practice. We do so many things with careful practice otherwise. Driving your car or studying your exams and working in the workplace and all the other things that people do very carefully. The foundation for all of that is our devotional practice done very carefully. And there's a potency in that that pervades everything, all features of life. And gradually, so the material cessation comes on its own, and the awakening of our affinity for Krishna comes naturally so. Hankering, yes, but it comes naturally so. And then, whatever situation we're in, we're with Krishna. That's how the bhakti process works. So, all of that, I just was, Prema Trangani made mention during the question and answer session of the morning class, more of a comment that Jiva Goswami comments on these very phrases that we were reading in the morning in these ways, so I just wanted to spend some time. Sorry if it wasn't so organized, maybe a little scattered. But just some appreciation. So as devotees, it's nice when we hear something that attracts our attention to go more deeply, see from different angles of vision. Prabhupada would do that in his Bhaktivedanta purports. We have all these literatures that are helping us with commentaries of acharyas, which Prabhupada distilled in his simplified form in the Bhaktivedanta purports, but these other resources are there to help us go more deeply. And what a treasure. I mean, I'll say it one more time. From the 16 colleges, whatever the number is, colleges that I visited in the past while, there's really isn't a clue. There's a hankering, there's a number of young people hankering from all kinds of different backgrounds. These days, it's not always like this, but all different backgrounds. Cultural, even religious. Somebody coming that's a Muslim, several people coming that are Christian and asking Christian-oriented questions about Mahamantra and Krishna's form and things. It's really interesting. There's a hankering, but what that shelter is unknown. We're so fortunate we have it. And we can share it best if we receive it, and then when circumstance is there, we provide it to others. And Krishna likes that. Part of what we do. The kind of missionary thing that we do. What's our qualification? We're just representatives of disciplic succession, and we've been to our capacity we repeat the message, and even more importantly, to our capacity we apply the message in our own lives. Very powerful. What to do about a world that's so crazy? It comes back to a fundamental thing that's in the Bhagavatam. Vyasadev's desire to compile the Vedas, looking Trikalagya, looking into the future and seeing Kali Yuga, got to do something. So he did something. And that something that he wanted to do for the impact of the advent of Kali Yuga was take the Vedic literatures and put it in a written form and make it available to people. And that's what our disciplic succession is doing, and we're to represent them to our capacity, receive and give. And the depth of it is phenomenal. All that's needed offenseless chanting. Never hearing one lecture. That's all that's needed. And if there are persons that like to read, we have all these literatures. But literature is not just for bookworm type people. Literature is the endorsement or support of scriptural authority behind what we're doing. It's an authorized process using Prabhupada's language. It's an authentic process with deep tradition. We're very fortunate. So taking something that you hear, going with it more deeply, not just learning more about it, but bringing it inside, applying it, living it, growing in your Krishna consciousness, and then it becomes part of your being. It's inside. It's how it strongly influences how you live your life and how you experience life, and how your association can benefit those in your family and those that are close to you and those that you meet, and just because you're carrying Krishna Bhakti. Very powerful, very merciful process. Okay, so any discussion? Shri Vallabha?
Maharaj, this is a clarifying question I have based on what we heard this morning in the morning's discussion. So I was thinking about Gopakumar. I don't know why that came to my mind, but I was thinking Gopakumar's case, his situation, he was with the Gopas, he was there with Krishna, he was engaged in devotional service, but then he embarked on this elaborate quest to see the Supreme Personality in person, and he goes all the way and comes back, and then realizes the Supreme is right there in front of him.
Well, your premise got me confused. He was a little boy living in Vrindavan, but he didn't have an understanding of Krishna when he was living in Vrindavan. He was just with the other cowherd boys, like one of them. They had an occupation. They took care of cows. He didn't have Krishna in front of him. He didn't see Krishna, know Krishna, understand Krishna, nothing. He was just a little boy. And go back a little bit, and the whole conversation is the conversation with a Brahmana who was similarly on a quest, and he wanted to know, how do I find the resolution to my quest? And Gopakumar says, well, normally you don't talk about yourself, but I can't think of a better way to explain to you than using my own example, so here goes. So how to fulfill the quest of I want to know. And when he was a little boy, it's not even so much he wanted to know, he just was attracted to that Brahmana, and then, somehow requested, could you give me mantra? The quest took him to the place where, at the very end, the upper Goloka and this worldly Gokula, he recognized they were the same. There was no difference between them. Transcendentally, spiritually, no difference between them. You have something, yes?
Going back to the doubt about, the process, the goal is so high and so
Yeah.
low. And while we still have faith in the process of devotional service, occasionally we run into unfortunate situations where somebody who's been practicing for years,
Someone was what?
who's practicing for years together,
Yeah.
they drift away. Then
And they
feels-
drift away.
Yeah. And it feels like, oh my God,
If they can happen to them, what about me?
yeah. So how do one handle those doubts?
How do you handle those doubts? Well, I better be careful, because it could happen to me. Now, how does such a thing happen when that happens? That's what I need. Where's the pothole? Where's the danger on the royal road? Pride. That's a big one. Complacency. That's another one. Offense. Another big one. Let me be careful about pride, complacency, offense. So what are the offenses, and what's the best way to avoid the offenses? It's not just tremble and cower and stay in a corner. How do I avoid offenses? Well, I'm engaged in active service to Krishna.
I have a second question.
Yeah.
In the same lines again, the lifestyle of a Vaishnava is pretty high, and when we are either, because I'm involved in children's education too.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
They feel that it's a huge leap from what we're seeing out there to the life that we're practicing.
Yeah,
And they have those doubts. Yeah, I understand this is right, but it's a huge leap. How can, and even for somebody who's coming new to Krishna consciousness, they come, they watch our lifestyle, they feel like, oh my God, maybe I cannot do this. What's
I could say something comical. They don't have, we're not so high. The philosophy is, but, we're not. Well, it's depending upon the person who you're addressing, the communication is going to be a little different. Let's start with children. One of the responsibility of teachers with children or parents with children is character development, or the word that's used these days is value education. So what's important to you? And in some cases, children just do a behavior that really doesn't have anything behind it. And then as they grow up, because there's nothing behind it, the behavior changes and it modifies to whatever others are doing, and they just adopt what others are doing because they want social acceptance. So is there a price for social acceptance? What's really important to you? I'm not a father, parent, but I interact a lot with young people. Somehow it happens like that. And I find they can relate to discussions like that. Their behavior is still child's behavior, but there's, especially devotee children, the light's on inside. And they may say it in a different way than I would say it, or some other adult would say it, but what's really important to you? And there's some lines that just won't cross if they have a value. It's inbuilt GPS system. It's protection. And if there's, so that's part. How do you pass on values? Well, first of all, you model it. And then you don't, overpower them with my value superimposed on you because you're just supposed to be a piece of clay and I'm imprinting you. So here goes. So that's not, with respect, according to the capacity of the individual. There's different persons have different capacities. And I'm not a child educator, so I can't say too much about that. I'm just speaking principles. I'm sure there's those that have that sense. And traditionally, hearing from Scripture is huge, because those are our role model people, Ram and Krishna, and the devotees of Ram and the devotees of Krishna, and hear about them, and then you ask them, what did you understand? And is that important to you? And what are ways that you can live by that? Even there are people around you that don't live by that. What are some ways that you can do that? Great. Let me support you in that. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Depending on the child. And with newcomers, it's the dynamic, the shape of it is different, but the principles are not so different. It takes a lot of hearing, so the person feels that, wow, they care, they want to understand me. And the purpose of understanding is not they want to manipulate me, they just want to have a relationship. And then so it's like that, then is this a value that, what is it, what's important to you? Say, well, I like doing service, okay, great. What service do you like? Okay, great. And then assist. And then the activities of hearing chanting. Why is that important? Why do Hare Krishna people do that? Here's some of the reasons, the why reasons. And does that resonate with you? Anyway, depending on the person. What's a doable something of what you can do? Largely it's relationship, to help people that are at a newer stage go to the next stage. It's a relationship where you're worthy of their trust, and they want to take a step. Because you're worthy of their trust, you gesture in the direction of, here's some possibilities of directions you might want to go. Yeah, I like that one, okay. That's great. Let's get to work. I'll support you in that. Then next time you see it, aside from the conventional, how's it going, how's everything kind of talk, then, were you able to, no, I got distracted, okay. And just depending upon the person and the circumstance. Just next step. Heading towards the hearing and chanting process, but something that resonates with them. So we need a lot of people, because we have a lot of new people, so we have to have people that have that skill. Not just like cookie cutter kind of interaction people, they just relational kind of people that want to help people see what's important to them and connect them with somebody that knows about music, or knows about cooking, or knows about festival organizing, or knows about something or something. We want to qualify them to do some service, but under a proper guide. Anyway. Some of the basics, kind of like boot camp, sorry to use the term, introduction is our Bhakti Vriksha format, and then the topics that are covered kind of touch on basic people's things. And depending upon their nature, different, emphasize this, emphasize that. See where their interests are and provide the resource to assist that interest and guide. One of the shortcomings, this is me speaking, one of the shortcomings that I see is, particularly with the non-resident Indian population that come to our temples, particularly in suburbs, but not only in suburbs. There's piety, there's intellectual acumen, there's a willingness to do something service-wise, practical-wise, finance-wise, or something like that. You may not have so much time, but there's not the Vaishnava element isn't refined. This is me. Therefore, there's a sense of entitlement because da-da-da-da-da-da, although I don't have the refinements of Vaishnava character. I see that as a problem. Not that they're unwilling to receive it, but we're not prepared to give it. And I see that leading to further problems. That's going to result in a management structure that's going to have to deal with problems rather than deal with training people to come forward. You've heard me say this before, just a shorter version than the 20-minute version I gave last year. It's a concern. And the concern best if it's addressed by thoughtful structures and people populating the structure that sees to very conscious, careful training and education of the new people that come forward according to their capacity. No urgency to it, but importance for sure. Especially, in our inner circle. There's concentric circles out and out and out. We don't have the same expectation of the people that are out in this part of the concentric circle. But as we get closer and closer, it becomes more and more important. The refinement of Vaishnava character. Not just piety and intelligence and I can get things done. Got my sleeves rolled up and ready to go. Follow? Yeah. Anything else? Krishna, Krishna. Yes?
Just thinking about Nishtha, Guru Maharaj.
Nishtha.
How to practice it.
How to practice it. Bhajana Kriya.
Is it like, is it like passionately doing?
Oh, it's eager, not passionate. Utsahan. Nishchayat. Dayayat. The distinction is very simple language. Passion is the attachment to an object with the idea of being the enjoyer of the object. And enthusiasm has another, at least the spiritual kind of enthusiasm has another connotation. That is, I wish to be, just as it's described here, in a relationship of service with Krishna. I wish to be in a relationship with Krishna. I wish to revive that relationship of loving service to Krishna. I'm patient for that purification and everything else that's needed. And that's what sustains from the enthusiasm on one side and the conviction that that Krishna is real and the process to reach him is real. It's going to help me get there. That's the enthusiasm, same as mentioned here. So I guess we're done. My apology, I wanted to, I was inspired by the discussion, the question of the input that Prema Trungani gave this morning. I got distracted after class this morning at breakfast and with something else, and so I kind of like watching a popcorn machine probably, how I was presenting things. Just all over the place. Wasn't very well organized. I wasn't satisfied with how I presented. The elements are there, but just not very well structured. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.